right, is identity politics reshaping our republic? Our next guest says it's nothing new and has been around since the American Revolution. Writing in the Wall Street Journal, here's an excerpt. Today's identity conflicts over race, sex, and class reflect contradictions in the idea of representation that have been present since America's parted ways with King George. Joining us right now is the assistant editorial features editor for the Wall Street Journal, Jason Willick. So, Jason, this is built into our system. In what way?
Yeah, so I think the American Republic was formed because, in part because people were worried British Parliament doesn't represent people like us. Ordinary Americans felt people in Parliament, they don't know what it's like to be in America or to be in the New World, and we want people who will represent our interests. So we fought a revolution over that. And then after the revolution, once again, we had anti-federalists and federalists arguing against each other for the writing of the Constitution. And the anti-federalists said, we want people represented who are Germans and who are Presbyterians and who are carpenters and plumbers, and specific groups need to be represented. And the Federalists said, no, we have a common interest. We should not have specific groups arguing against one another for their own narrow interests.
And that was Alexander Hamilton. And so having that system, you're saying that it used to function better than it did right now. What went wrong?
Well, I'm not sure it ever functioned that much better. I think a lot of the founders, the historian Gordon Wood, who I talk about in the piece, he says a lot of the founders who lived into the 19th century, they thought we have a lot more populism and a lot more identity politics in our republic than we had intended when we wrote the Constitution. But I think the Federalists had hoped that we would argue about ideas more and argue about tribes less and have tribes pitted against one another less.
Right, and right now, when you look at what's happening in America, do you think it's important to go back and see where we started to understand where we're going?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sympathetic to the Federalists and to Alexander Hamilton. I think they had the right idea when they said, we're a republic with one single interest. We want one nation that's working toward a common goal. We don't want, whites and blacks and LGBT and women all pitted against each other fighting for narrow interests. We want sort of a...
Maybe the next candidate will actually do that. Jason Willick, thanks so much. I love the perspective you brought. Meanwhile, more Fox and Friends will wrap up 3 hours if we can in just a moment.